food crops that are grown for human consumption, there's a huge economic loss. Smallholder farmers, they also lose a portion of their incomes. And so you grow 100%, but you only sell 30, 40, 50% of that, then there's a huge economic loss.
Agriculture is one of the most private sector oriented businesses there is.
So many people farm without thinking about the market. And that is where the challenge comes in, and that is why they find themselves disadvantaged.
What is the role of business and entrepreneurs in that whole chain between the farm and the fork, when in fact we keep speaking of growing the amount of food, the amount that is produced? Well, we forget that of all that's produced, 40% is lost. So let's come back and make sure that we first figure out how to make sure that we're not having those losses.
When we think about reducing post-harvest loss, it's really, from a business standpoint, it's really about supply chain efficiency and supply chain inefficiency. And so market-driven solutions that engage and incentivize the private sector to come in are critically important.
That's very important, just changing that narrative to say, look, it's a business, which means that it can provide good employment, it can create income for you and your family and everything. And you'll be proud to go out there and bring out a compliment card and say, look, this is what I'm doing this agriculture-related business.
In order to sort of have the maximum benefit anyway, you need to work along the whole value chain.
Getting buy-in from the whole value chain on seeing that if there's more on the shelf and more consumer pull, then the whole chain just benefits from that.
It starts with training these young entrepreneurs to say, watch out. If you don't use the right varieties, if you don't use the fertilizer, if you don't think about who you're going to sell the produce to, your access to markets and so forth, it's inevitable that you will come up with such things like post-harvest losses.
Is there a market for the crops that are currently lost? Are there technology providers that can do something to preserve and conserve those crops? Are there financial incentives that would lead farmers to do things differently? Contracting, where they know they have a market before they actually grow, but also distribution and transportation.
So I think, logistics infrastructure, roads and rail networks, cold storage chains, and just trying to develop capability in that value chain to deliver very simple tasks very accurately, like transport, delivering routes to markets. I think generally you get a whole economic upliftment that is to the benefit of business.
So what we do is when we supply farmers with seed, we then bring people that buy the end product to come and be the off-takers of the final product, so that the farmers know that when they plant, they have an assured market.
We have launched this huge initiative for creating 1 million tons of cold chain in Africa. And the idea is to create cold chains for potatoes and other crops so that there's less losses, and the farmer who increases productivity earns really more money.
The unique vantage point that we have as the Rockefeller Foundation is that we can take a systems approach. We can look at the entire system. We see ourselves as what we call a systems integrator, and also the connective tissue to really create transparency along the supply chain and accountability throughout the supply chain.
All the technologies, all the knowledge exists. I think collectively the governments, the industry, the farmer groups, the NGOs need to work together and prioritize what needs to be done.